This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you're struggling through the pains of alcohol or drug addiction or a mental health disorder, now's the time to seek the help that you need. Let this be an opportunity to get back on track and get back to finding the real you. You're not alone. Promises Behavioral Health is here and they can help. Now, we've worked with Promises for years. We know their teams personally. We have great relationships with them. And most importantly, we trust Promises, and so can you. To learn more about Promises treatment options near you, for you, or your loved one, here's what you can do. You can go to promises.com/soberguy. That's promises.com/soberguy. Or you can just pick up the phone and call 888-205-1890. That's 888-205-1890. Tell them that you heard about them from That Sober Guy podcast.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Tommy Rosen, and you are listening to That Sober Guy podcast.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast, and we help people stay sober. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today. So excited to share some new content with you. Just had a great conversation with Tommy Rosen.
No goodbyes, just sneak to the
Talked about quite a few things. Escaping reality, chronic pain, community, awareness, how key awareness is in our own walk in this world. Talked a little bit about the difference between recovery 1.0 versus recovery 2.0, which is very interesting in itself. Just want to thank Tommy for coming on the podcast today. If you're not familiar with Tommy or his work, Tommy Rosen is a yoga teacher. He's an addiction recovery expert. He spent the last 2 decades immersed in recovery and wellness. He holds multiple certifications in different types of yoga. He has 31 years of continuous recovery from drug addiction. He's also the founder of Recovery 2.0 Global Community, the Recovery 2.0 online conference series, and the Recovery 2.0 group coaching program. He leads yoga retreats, workshops internationally, presents regularly at yoga conferences and festivals. He also has a book, Recovery 2.0, Move Beyond Addiction and Upgrade Your Life, which was published back in 2014. And everything we talked about today, we'll be sure to put in the show notes so it's easier for you to find. Man, before we get to Tommy today, you can find all of our resources, like our free 10-day guide to help jumpstart your sobriety, or still jumpstart your life without alcohol, our 30-day Quit Drinking Dude Challenge, which is 30 podcasts in 30 days. You can join our Sober Guy men's group. You can find podcast meetings, more resources, all by going to thatsoberguy.com. You'll be able to find everything there. And then you can follow us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. And once again, like I mentioned, all the links from today's podcast will be in the show notes. Really appreciate Tommy coming on the show today. And man, I'm excited to share this with you. So without further ado, here is Tommy Rosen. Welcome to the show. I'm here with Tommy Rosen. Tommy, it's good to have you today. How are you, my friend?
I'm so good, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you. For those out there who might be new to your work, they've heard your name, they don't really know the background about you. Maybe just give us a brief rundown of who you are, Tommy.
Sure. Well, in the context of what we're speaking about, which is really, recovery from addiction, I started my journey 33 years ago when I went to treatment in 1989. I went up to Hazelden, and I really got it. I had been a severe drug addict at that point, alcoholic, mostly, cocaine, heroin at the end that brought me down to my knees. And I began my journey of recovery in 1989. I would stay sober for a year out of treatment. I would have a year of relapse. And then in 1991, June 23rd, 1991, I got sober for the last time. And I'm about 31 years into this magical mystery tour is really what it is.
Nice, man. 31 years. That's inspiring. It's good stuff, man.
Thank you.
So I hear from a lot of guys, and even myself experienced some of this, that back and forth. You mentioned you went through a year of relapse. What do you think? What do you think that is, first of all? And then what do you think for the guy out there that's really struggling right now, that's going back and forth? What was it that changed for you in that moment, to be able to then go on and put 31 years together?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. So let's say that a person going from, using drugs and alcohol, moving on to a path of recovery, or whatever the addictive behavior might have been. The person moving onto a path of recovery, they only know one thing at that point, that they want their life to change. They don't know if they're going to be able to do it. They don't know how to do it. There's a lot of uncertainty, insecurity in that movement. There's a lot of fear. Naturally, I'm leaving something familiar behind, and I'm trying to build a life for myself. And the real frightening thing for people is that they come to the real truth. And the real truth is I do not know how to live.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do this. And I certainly don't know how to do this without drugs and alcohol, or whatever the thing is that I've been relying on for a number of years. So coming onto a new path like that, the language that I'm going to use for that is you've had a leap in consciousness, meaning you've become more conscious, more aware of something, and now you're going to work on trying to bring that into your life, into being. Okay.
Yeah.
So every time a person has a leap forward in consciousness, no matter what it is, when you become more aware of something, in comes the fluctuation. Now we start fluctuating. I'm in the new understanding, and I'm glad to be here, or I'm not glad to be here, but I'm here and I need to be here. And then you drop back to, but I don't know what to do. And wasn't I more comfortable yesterday when I was using drugs, or for the past couple of weeks or years? And then you come back up to the new awareness. It's like, well, that wasn't working for me. I really need to find a way through to something else. And so there's this mental and certainly emotional fluctuation. The only way that a person goes through that process and gets into recovery and steady with recovery is to start to build consistency.
Yeah.
And that's not one of our favorite words. Okay. Consistency, not one of the things that we're necessarily good at, though if you think about it, we were consistently very good at scoring drugs, using drugs or alcohol or whatever the addictive behavior was. We were very consistent with that. Now we have to let go of that. We got to move in here. We got to do something new and be consistent with it. If you're a 12-step person and you've entered the 12-step universe, surely you have heard the term 90 meetings in 90 days. Why? Why 90 meetings in 90 days? Because we're trying to create consistency with something new. The problem is that in our mind at the beginning, we don't believe we're going to be able to transform the way we are thinking and feeling today. We think, well, what's the purpose of 90 meetings in 90 days if I'm going to feel this same insecurity, the same sense of stress and anxiety 90 days from now? And of course, you won't, but you don't know that yet. So to answer your question, the way that we move into longer term recovery, the way that we get 30 days, the way that we get 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, however many years, it only comes one way. And that's through consistently applying new behaviors, new attitudes, a new way of being in the world. If you do that, you will have this shift. You will. It's guaranteed.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for articulating that simply and well. That was great. I think this kind of ties into that with or this kind of next question or comment, and maybe we can kick it back and forth a little bit, was the desire to escape reality. So that's like, for me, that was why for so long I used alcohol and drugs. I wasn't secure. I wasn't confident. I wasn't able to be present, to be in the moment. And I was escaping a lot of past stuff. Now, I truly believe today that the habitual use of alcohol, drugs is actually meant and designed in some senses to subdue my own consciousness, my connection to God, for me to be the human being I was designed to be. I was never able to do that as I was still using, because my soul, my spirit was completely dead inside. So for somebody out there who is still going through that, how do we awaken the spirit? Obviously it starts, with making a decision, I think, but maybe you can speak a little bit to that, to your own experience or to what you see in 31 years of experience in working with many different people who've struggled with this.
Yes. Thank you. So the human being is, in my opinion, an evolutionary being. We're wired for change. We're wired to change our brain in positive ways. We're wired to experience new things. We're wired literally throughout our entire life to change our neurochemistry and our neural pathways. We're just an evolutionary being. We're meant to change. Now, addiction, strangely, goes against that principle of evolution. I look out into the universe, into the world that I can see with my eyes and my senses, and I see that everything is evolving. Everything's changing, except the addict.
Yeah, we're stuck.
The addict stays. It's really weird, man.
Yeah.
It goes against the directive to evolve. Because, addiction is like, well, I need to repeat these same things over and over again to keep myself, comfortable, or to manage my life or my emotions the way I think, or by the only means that I seem to have at my disposal. And I'll stay stuck. So I'm going against the evolutionary principle of the entire universe. And we come out on the short end of that stick. It's no good.
It's tough.
So how do we awaken? First thing we do, as we spoke about previously, about this leap in consciousness, realizing, okay, it's really as simple as this. I'm unhappy. Okay, that's a really good thing to be able to admit to yourself and to others who are close to you. It's not working out for me so far. Yeah. I'm unhappy in this moment, meaning the way that I understand myself in the world, in the eyes of others, in terms of my purpose for being here, in terms of the use of my creative energy, I haven't figured it out. Yeah. I'm unhappy, and I recognize that I'm stuck in this place. It's an incredible thing to be able to say that. That's the beginning of change. So that's the first thing, is you've got to be able to say, I see the problem. Okay. I may not know how to solve this problem, but I need to admit that I have it. And now I can begin to move forward. That moving forward is evolutionary. It's your evolution. It's your awakening.
Yeah.
And so every one of us is on an awakening each day in our life. So for me, my awakening today, for example, is, how am I feeling? Am I comfortable in my own skin? How are my relationships? Most importantly, how's my relationship with this machinery, this physical body? How am I doing? Am I in pain? Like that's an important thing. You know what people don't realize about those who struggle with addiction? We're always in chronic pain. Always. And now it may be emotional. It could be physical. But we're always in chronic pain. Chronic pain is the problem of the alcoholic. So if that's a problem and you recognize, oh, I'm in pain, then we can begin to get on a path to solve that problem, which is in today.
Yeah.
So let's say I've got lower back pain, and it's like really bad, as I did about 18 years ago. Well, I need to address that. But I don't know how to address that. What do I do? Oh, I speak to someone who knows how to address that. I reach out for help. How else? Well, I know that if I use drugs and alcohol, it may temporarily take away my physical pain, but it's going to bring a huge amount of psychic and emotional pain and ultimately more physical pain in the future.
Yeah.
So I know that's not a good idea. But since that's on my mind, fluctuating, I might benefit by getting around other people who are in recovery from addiction. That means I can go to a meeting. That means I can get involved with a sponsor. I can talk to a therapist who's familiar with addiction. I can connect with friends who are familiar with this, family members who care about me. And I can say, hey, here's what's going on with me today.
Yeah.
And so slowly but surely, the only way that we awaken is one day at a time by asking the right questions. And it starts with the body. And then beyond the body, I'm going to ask myself things like, what am I going to do today? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Do I have a job? Do I need money? And the answer is, of course, yes, you do in this world. How am I going to make money so that I can move through my life in a relatively relaxed manner and not feel like my core basic needs of home and food, shelter and clothing, these kinds of things need to be dealt with. Otherwise, I'll be in a constant state of psychic stress. And then beyond that, I'll ask the questions about my relationships. How am I with my wife? Why is that my first question? Because she's in the other room. She lives here in the house with me. And if that relationship's not going well, then there's something that's psychically an issue for me today, and I need to work on that issue. So you see, asking the right questions and then reaching out for help and organizing my life around recovery is how this thing works.
Yeah. That's good. I hear so much, I keep hearing the word awareness in everything that you're saying, awareness, presence. And I love the questions too, that self-diagnosis. We're so hard on ourselves, man. I'm one of the hardest. There's nobody harder on me than me. and that's been, I think, a big part of this journey for so many of us is learning how to ask ourselves those questions and then learning how to love ourselves too, just where we're at, not beat ourselves up. You mentioned the chronic pain, and we're talking about addiction, obviously. Go down the list: food, sex, drugs, alcohol. I mean, it's all kind of the same concept, but it's almost too like we're addicted to the struggle. We're addicted to the pain, and when we start to see some progress, we can self-sabotage at the same time. And so this kind of leads me into what you talked about at the end there, and you started to bring up community and the importance of that. And I know we were going to talk a little bit about recovery 1.0 versus recovery 2.0, and maybe that kind of ties into the community aspect of this too. But I'd love to hear your take on why that's so important and how folks can, if maybe they don't know where the heck to start. Where do you start to start getting around people that are going to help support you rather than, bring you down?
It's just such an important matter to discuss for everybody. And I would say for anybody listening to this, in 31 years, I could sum up the single most important thing I've done in my recovery is develop the habit to reach out to people when I'm uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that there isn't a moment where I have to sit still with myself, because I love that. I'm a yoga teacher, meditation expert. I love this. I love to sit. And I can tell you, even with those skills, if I get into a difficult emotional or mental situation that lasts more than 5 minutes, I'm on the phone with somebody. And it has served me my entire 31 years of recovery. And people are like, oh, well, it can't be that simple. I'm like, well, there's nothing simple about it. For you to reach out to another human being when you need to, and to have that be a habit that you develop, that takes humility, that takes honesty, that takes, you have to actually be willing to reach out to another person. And it's not necessarily our first impulse. We haven't been trained that way. But what I'm suggesting to you is that I've trained myself with the help of a lot of people to be in the habit of reaching out to other people. Here's why. There's something that happens for us when we get into a dark place. And we can define a dark place as being, let's just say we're stuck in negative thinking.
Okay.
Of any kind. So it could be a judgment or condemnation, self-judgment. It could be shame, guilt. These are terrible, terribly dark places to be. Jealousy, rage, anger, these kinds of places. If you get stuck there, you're no longer thinking clearly. You have lost what I would refer to in yoga as your transparency of mind. Your mind is no longer serving you in this case. Now it's like your mind has been taken over, and it's like it has tuned itself to the frequency, the radio channel, if you will, of pain and suffering. Here we are at Pain and Suffering Radio, and the thoughts that are coming in are numerous and painful. And you're not thinking clearly, so you're a little bit at the mercy of those thoughts. You interpret your reality as being those thoughts. And those thoughts are incredibly negative because you can't see clearly in that kind of thinking. You must speak with somebody else who is not in that kind of thinking. And they can see more clearly, and with compassion and kindness, they can say to you, hey man, you're not thinking clearly right now. Let's talk this through. How did you come to think this way? What happened in your day today that, threw you off center, triggered you into this kind of negativity? And now you're on the path of recovery again, because someone is guiding you in the moment to a more clear way of thinking. You're understanding something triggered you. You're learning what the trigger was, and you're learning to come off the cliff and to just deal with the discomfort of the moment. And then you find that it passes.
Yeah. Temporary.
So the yoga and the meditation piece, or the contemplation piece, let's say for people, is we do want to become clearer thinking individuals unto ourselves. But even as a clear thinking individual, you can be pulled off center because you're a human being, and you can be triggered, and you can enter this dark space. How do I know that? Because I'm 31 years sober, and I still can enter a dark space from time to time. And when I go there, as I said, my habit is pick up the phone and call somebody who's more clear thinking than I am in that moment.
Yeah.
Takes humility, but I've amassed an army of people that care about me that would be willing to help me when I get into these difficult spots. And then to your point earlier about, we're so hard on ourselves. And, Shane said, I'm harder on myself than anybody else. So there's a great quote, and I want to bring it up here. And the quote is, I walk in a constant shower of self-forgiveness.
Love that.
A constant shower. I'm showered in self-forgiveness all the time because I'm human and I'm going to make mistakes. And those mistakes may happen frequently. I'm trying to make new mistakes and not old mistakes. At this point, that I consider that an awakening of sorts, right?
It's a win.
Yeah, that's a win. So that's where I'm at. And so I think we all need to walk in a constant shower of self-forgiveness. Yeah.
I love that. That forgiveness piece is so huge, man. It really is a practice daily, I think. And I love that you point out, because maybe there's someone listening and they're like, well, I'm struggling to stay sober, today, or I only have 30 days, or I only have a year. Tommy's got 31 years, but you can see just by what Tommy pointed out there, he's got 31 years and he still has things, like you said, you're just trying to not make old mistakes. You're still making new mistakes because we're in process. We're constantly changing. We're evolving. We're rolling through this life, trying to do the best we can. And so I just want to throw that out there. Like the time aspect of this, it's great. I'm a big believer in celebrating the time and honoring that too. But man, the time is really irrelevant at the end of the day because we are trying to do this thing on the day, and each day brings something a little bit different, Love to give you an opportunity though to jump into Recovery 1.0 versus Recovery 2.0. We didn't get to that. Did you want to discuss that a little bit, or?
I love to. It's a great topic. We speak about it in our the people that work with me in Recovery 2.0. We talk about this topic every day because we're trying to create products and services that can be helpful to anybody at any stage along the journey. So I would begin talking about Recovery 1.0 versus Recovery 2.0 by stating something that I think is obvious. different people need different things at different times. And that addiction happens in stages and recovery happens in stages.
Yeah.
When I was one day sober, I needed certain things. And those things have changed and evolved over time. Now at 31 years sober, I need different things at this moment in time. The most important thing for me is to be open to what my needs might be any particular day.
Yeah.
The thing that hasn't changed for me as a human being is that I still have to take life on a one day at a time basis. And what I mean by that is we do reset each day. I have to wake up. I have to eat. I have to tend to the needs of my body.
Yeah.
I have to tend to the needs of my mind and my heart. And what I mean by that is I have to be creative in this world. I have to. So do you. And the most difficult moments, I think, for people are when we have no sense of purpose, no sense of what to do. Where should we put our energy? And that's painful because we can feel worthless or like, wow, how can I not know what to do? I'm 55 years old, and there's still days when I wake up and I'm like, I have a great sense of purpose with Recovery 2.0, but I just want everyone to understand, like any one of us can step off of our center and feel lost, especially in the world we live in today. There's so many ways we can stress and be anxious and depressed and want to medicate or distract ourselves from that. So it's a very, very difficult time in a certain respect to be alive today. So the 1.0, Recovery 1.0 for me is really moving from, I know I need help. I know I can't keep living the way I've been living. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it through the day.
Yeah.
The 1.0 process is getting yourself to a place where you have a ground beneath you, a foundation. You know what to do each day to get through the day sober, clean and sober, whatever that means for you. You've proven to yourself over enough of a period of time that you can actually do this thing. The 1.0 part is getting onto solid ground and realizing, okay, I now have a way forward. And not only do I have a way forward, I want it.
Yeah.
So
good.
for me in my own life, I remember waking up. This was about almost a year into my recovery where I really worked the 12 steps. I worked the 12 steps, and they really did have a profound impact on the way I saw the world and myself in the world. And I woke up one morning and I realized I can't remember the last time I thought about using drugs. I can't even remember when that was. And that was a profound shift for me because normally I couldn't make it through a day without using drugs. And so I was thinking about using drugs all day long. And that is a fact. And then I went from that to somebody who couldn't even remember when I had last thought about using. So that profound shift, that's that 1.0 shift. Like I've got a community of people. I've got teachers or people that can guide me and help me, mentor me. And I've got kind of a path that I can walk, a way to be each day that makes sense to me. And now I'm a person in recovery. So that's beautiful. And as a person in recovery, hopefully you'll be removed from the craving to use drugs and alcohol or whatever the addictive behavior was. And so you're not constantly beset by this thinking of should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And so you're not in that conflict. That's freedom can be reached in Recovery 1.0. Then all of life takes place. Now you have to look at your body, your relationships, your mind, how you are in work, creativity, abundance, creation of possibility and opportunity in your life, connecting with somebody in an intimate level. Every aspect of human experience is now going to take place for you. And guess what? You're clean and sober through all of it. And if you're anything like me, you may not be very skilled at those things. when those things start to show up in your life. In fact, you might find out, like I found out, that long before drugs and alcohol came into my world, relationships were one of the things that were the most uncomfortable for me. And that's part of why I started using drugs and alcohol in the first place.
Did you have was social anxiety an issue in some instances, or was it more just direct relationship issues?
For me, I would say hyperactivity and anxiety in general were my issues. I was always good socially.
Yeah.
I could say the right things, be the right way, but the thing that was happening there was I was not necessarily being authentic to me.
Got it.
I was changing my behavior so that I could be approved of by you.
Yeah.
And that means I left my authenticity. I lived in those years at a distance from my own authenticity. It's too painful.
Yeah.
Too painful for anybody. So I had to learn to become authentic again in my recovery, in my relationships, I had to deal with other addictions like, cigarettes, addiction to relationships and sex, addictions to gambling and money issues, and all of it. It all came up in my life. And so you see, I needed different things at different times. And the 1.0 piece of this was my primary addiction to drugs and alcohol. I was relieved of it so I could begin to face the whole rest of my life. Now, so Recovery 2.0 is all about refinement, becoming stronger, more empowered, dealing with the mind at a very deep level, calming the mind, identifying your heartfelt desires in this world and being able to pursue them in an appropriate way. It's about yoga to me, about meditation to me.
Yeah.
It's about healthy diet, and it's about health and wellness, becoming like the best version of yourself. Those are the aspects of Recovery 2.0. I feel like if you've struggled with addiction, you're going to need some of the Recovery 1.0 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Get the ground underneath you, and then start pursuing the 2.0 stuff so that you can be all that you can be. That's how I would sort of differentiate those two things.
And as you're describing that, I was picturing like a custom house. And so you have this house, it's this beautiful thing. Maybe it's a vision that you have, right? And before you can go do the game room or what the pool, whatever it is that you want to do, man, you got to set that foundation. It has to be a solid footing in the ground that's well placed and ready to go to build upon. So if I was to kind of use that analogy, the 1.0 would be the foundation of the house. And then after we get that set, we can start putting up the walls and we can start putting in the different rooms and different things. Is that a pretty fair way to put it?
Oh, 100%. And I guess I could expand on that analogy. I was just reading a story about this guy extremely successful guy in recovery who had owned a whole bunch of treatment centers. And he got arrested for sexual impropriety with some of the girls that were coming to his treatment center.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm someone who struggled with sex addiction, and I've had issues in that area. So I can't sit back here and be like all judgmental and condemning of that man. I can of the behavior, and I can say, wow, what a shame that this guy got sober and has had so much success creatively and financially, but there's aspects of his being that haven't yet recovered.
Yeah.
And it came out sideways in his behavior, and now he's going to go to jail. And so I don't bring up that story I bring it up as a cautionary tale that I, like everybody else, I have work that I have to do around all of these issues in my life.
Yeah.
I don't ever put myself above it. So I'm in the Recovery 1.0 work while I'm in the Recovery 2.0 work, in a sense.
I love it. Yeah.
I need the foundation still, and I need to make sure that foundation is going well. And then to build all the rest of the house. And there's really, it's very painful what that man is going to go through.
Yeah.
And is going through. And so we all as a society will cancel that guy. Wow. Can you imagine somebody so dark and so horrible? And yes, the behavior is dark. It comes from unconscious parts of a human being. Yeah. It's so dark. And I'm not trying to be an apologist for this guy. It's really awful behavior.
Yeah.
And I also understand it from the level of addiction. And so if we're really asking ourselves, what do we want in the world? We don't just want to be, financially successful. We don't want to just be very creative beings if we haven't worked on the inside stuff that's keeping us stuck in our addiction and our addictive behaviors.
Yeah.
That's where the 2.0 stuff comes in. Like, this is where we have to really, really do our work and be even more rigorously honest than we've been even in the 1.0 part of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that story reminded me of the story in the Bible where the adulteress was going to be stoned, and they all came out, and Jesus said, okay, whoever has never sinned, you throw the first stone. Right. And they all looked at each other and turned around and walked away. we're all jacked up, all of us in some way. So I love how you frame that up, though. Like I'm not judging the man. We're all human beings. We make mistakes. We do things, but the certain issue, obviously not a good situation to be in. But man, good stuff. We just got a couple of minutes left, Tommy. So do you want to hit on a life beyond craving before we wrap up, or do you have any advice maybe you want to give to anybody? Definitely want to make sure we know where to find all of your work at, any contact info. Where could folks do that as well?
Yeah. So a life beyond craving, who doesn't want that? That's this place of presence. Imagine, how would you be if you didn't feel compelled to chase after anything? If you weren't trying to satisfy a craving and you were just being present, you were just being you, and you were contented and seriously contented, like you were at ease in your body, in your mind, and in your life. Imagine that. To me, that's the promise of Recovery 2.0. And if that's interesting to you, you can find us in so many places. For one thing, we have meetings, which of course are free to anybody, anywhere, anytime. And we have over 30 meetings a week online on Zoom. And you can get to our meetings at r20.com/meetings. That's r20.com/meetings. And those meetings are women's meetings, men's meetings, Spanish speaking meetings, codependency meetings, speaker meetings, big book meeting, whatever it is. Like, we've got meetings that can help anybody move through a day and to get this thing called recovery. In addition to that, we have a membership. That's a paid offering where we go deep into our deeper practices of yoga, meditation, diet stuff. We do immersive events together each month. We meet every Monday night and Thursday night in our membership together, and we do some extraordinary things. And we basically are walking this path of recovery together all year long. And, I tell people, I guess in our community, people are like, well, you charge for your recovery-based membership? Like, I can't believe there's money involved here. And I'm like, look, we charge less than $1 a day for something that is life-changing for the whole year. And, treatment is so expensive. Therapy is so expensive. Medical expense is so expensive. And so we've put together what we think is an incredible offering that we think is central to somebody's opportunity to thrive in this life. And so we ask you to come and check out what we're doing and do it for free. We have a free trial, and you just go r20.com/join and check us out. You got a week to see if what we're doing resonates with you. And if it doesn't, there's no strings attached whatsoever. So, that's our proposition. So there's that. And then there's, the Recovery 2.0 YouTube channel is deep, people, deep. You could spend a lifetime there and learn everything you needed to know. And that's, of course, free to everybody. And our Instagram channel, our TikTok, and everything else that we're doing. We put up content every day to inspire and uplift people into recovery. And of course, the Recovery 2.0 book that I wrote. So take a look for that. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, man. And we'll put all those links, everything that Tommy just talked about, they'll be in the show notes for you. So it's very easy to find. Tommy, it's been great to have you on the podcast today, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Shane. I'm so grateful. Keep up the amazing work.
You're the